You're here, which means that you've found spirit crumbs, leading you to your inner light worker. I will be sharing how these tiny little hints from the universe have led me to where I am today. I hope that by hearing my story and the stories of others, you'll pick up your own spirit crumbs along the way that will lead you to somewhere magical. Thanks for coming along for the journey. Let's see where it takes us. Hello, and welcome to another Cosmic Energy Report. I'm Andrea from Concrete and Crystals and Spirit Crumbs.
And I'm Emily from Emily and Her Stars and Things That Make You Go Woo.
And we're here this time to talk to you about Pisces season. And this, as much as it's a flowy water sign, has a lot happening. So buckle up, get a beverage, lock in, maybe take some notes. But I feel like Emily has a lot to share in terms of astrology this month.
This has been, and coming into March in particular, has been this moment for so many astrologers. We've had our eyes on this month because we're just like, that's a lot. And it also feels like the catapult that really launches us into everything else that's going to happen in 2025. I was thinking the other day about a visualization for the year, and I feel like January was us getting in the car, packing our snacks, and being like, we're going on the trip. We got the map open and we're headed towards the freeway because we're not just doing the back roads, we're taking a big trip. And February was like, okay, we're on the on-ramp. There's no going back. We're building momentum. We're having to merge, and everybody's going a lot faster than we anticipated. And March is, we are on the 15-lane expressway, and we're going. There's no turn back.
We're in the carpool lane. We're in it together. We're going as fast as humanly possible. We're skipping past all the people that are choosing to get stuck on the road bumps and still looking at the map and yelling at their passengers. We're just going right past it. We're skipping all of that energy. I feel like the lead up for me, because I moved in January and I had a lot going on the last few months leading up to that. I think this month has been the first month that I've sort of been finding my own trajectory again. It hasn't been fast moving yet, but the energy is there. Like, I feel it. I'm starting to do things, but once I get going, I know it's going to be like moving forward. It's almost like I'm taking a moment to just have that little breath before things get busy again. I do feel like that on ramp for February does feel very relevant. Like, I think I'm about to merge. I'm getting the speed going and I'm ready to merge back into society, back into life, back into whatever direction's happening this year.
And I feel like there's all those last minute checks, like, did you remember everything? Does anybody have to go to the bathroom? Like, all of the little reminders keep popping up, but then there's also this excitement a little bit. And Andrea and I have been talking so much about the amount of creativity coming in. And one of the things that I think is so interesting, because a lot of this energy that we're dealing with, particularly at the first of the year, is Venus and Mars, both in shadow, in retrograde. Both of them are going to pass each other coming up. But one of the things I thought was so interesting was that Venus moved into Aries on February 4th. And on the 9th, we had the incredibly impactful Super Bowl halftime show, which was like, how subversive can we make art? How many hidden messages and extra meaning can we put into things? And I think that energy is going to continue, but then of course it's going to go retrograde. So there's so many options coming in still.
Yeah, and I think because there is a different feeling already this year, like I don't think I got like a New Year's kind of feeling, but in the last month, I think it's really started to feel like a different energy. And I think a lot of people are feeling that. A lot of people are turning to art because there's so much going on. A lot of people are finding ways to share their messages in a way that is impactful and meaningful and to the point. I think a lot more people are finding short form content, but also people are diving back into long form content. And I think people are kind of switching. I see a lot of people that used to do long form stuff going to like TikTok or something to just get the facts out there because they're not reaching enough people. And then people that maybe were on TikTok are expanding into like a Substack. And I think art in general is really going through a lot of collaboration. And like Emily said, there's a lot of messages that are being passed through. And I think in the past, obviously, art has always played a big part in any sort of revolution. And I actually just watched a documentary. I'm obsessed with Canopy. I've talked about it on here before. Like it's this video platform, but it usually is through libraries that you have access. And I watch documentaries constantly, all art ones, but I was talking to someone recently about the fact that in my art degree, art history is a compulsory thing, obviously, and you have to take a certain number of credits. And I took one that was like the basic, all encompassing art history, but everything I took after that was 1950s and more recent because of the identity politics that you learn while you're in art. I learned a lot of political movements through art. I didn't take history, but I took so much of it that like I have actually a deeper knowledge than some people that I know, have done deep dives into history because it sticks with me. Like that's how I learn. That's how I remember things. And I think the fact that you see a lot now where arts are getting on, like Trump putting himself on a board of a major arts thing, like it's like people know, especially having it like after that Super Bowl performance. I think people know that art is the way that the average person who maybe doesn't have the attention span or the interest in getting into political writing or reading or watching a long form video, they will watch art, they will listen to rap lyrics, they will go to a museum, they will go and on Instagram and see a really impactful painting. Like they will find art and art will find people, and I think that is going to be really intense. I'm excited because I genuinely feel like a lot of creativity, like Emily said, is coming in right now. And with the eclipse coming and stuff, I really feel like it's going to be a movement that's unstoppable as much as they may try to suppress it. Like zines, things like that, that were like actually one of the main things I was watching the documentary about how printmaking is the revolution. Zines, posters, all of these things like out of printmaker. So for me, it's like super interesting to know that it's such a huge part of almost every movement has been through some form of printmaking. So yeah, it's really going to be interesting to see what forms of art and what mediums end up really moving forward in the next few months. I feel like it's coming pretty strong.
It's so interesting that you bring up that printmaking and the history, particularly during the 50s and 60s. And I had this image flash in of some of the earliest descriptions of witches, which were also woodblock prints. And they were always usually an elderly or older looking woman. Maybe she's got a crooked nose. Maybe she's looked haggard. Her hair is long and stringy. How powerful images can be. And it depends on whose hands they're in and what the intention is behind them. And we're going to probably see more and more of that being used and manipulated in all sorts of ways. And you add in this Aquarius energy, we've got AI popping off like crazy. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting time. And I read on Threads the other day this quote that I think for me encompasses why astrology is so fun. And I hate to say fun, but they said astrology is like watching the news, but ahead of time. And I think that is partly why so many of us like putting together these patterns, because there's a feeling of, yes, it can feel like control or like I can self-soothe a little bit if I know it's coming. And there's also a feeling of how can I use this to my benefit? If I know art and powerful messages are what are really transpiring right now, I can pay attention to how they're being used. I can pay attention to what the intent and the messages are underneath that aren't being said. Just like the halftime show, Super Bowl show. How many people were either just completely didn't get it or were doing days worth of research and they're like, oh my God, this was something in Braille and this was a reference to this movie. And there were all these other hidden underlying things. So yeah, it's astrology and tarot and all of the things, bringing these cards and cosmos together. It's my favorite thing. I love looking into the patterns of it all.
Yeah. And I think the fact that now we have, like you said, AI, we have all of these things, like now we have to be more cautious of like what we look at. But again, I think the main thing has been like propaganda, like versus art of from the people. Like you do have to see where things originate from. And I think that is always going to be something now. I don't think we can ever get away from having that as part of the process. But I think that's where also a lot of critical thinking skills I gained from art history and from the knowledge of how images are used. It's interesting how the arts is always given such like it's a surface level thing or it's not necessary, but I think there's so many layers, especially in the 60s and 70s, like intellectual and conceptual art was a big deal. And like some of it was very ridiculous, but the whole point of it was that like sometimes the people want to just be able to be thought provoking, and people want to have like build those critical thinking skills. If it's not on the surface, that's actually giving the viewer a lot of credit. That's saying, I know you're smart. I know you can figure this out. I don't have to show the whole picture for you to know what it means. And the cool thing about that is the people who maybe lack the education or lack the skills, who are falling for some of the other stuff, you could literally hand a flyer right to them and they won't get that. But the people who are meant to get it, it's almost like the feeling of like a movement that can go undetected. And I think that's probably honestly what's going to happen for a lot of it, is like it will be things that are very obvious for the people that are in the know. And that's kind of what happened, like Emily said, with the Super Bowl performance. The people that were like, that was the worst performance ever, blah, blah, blah. Then you obviously didn't get it because like that was incredibly nuanced. And to have that much, I mean, Kendrick Lamar, let's be honest, he just won a bunch of Grammys. He has a Pulitzer Prize. As soon as I knew he was performing, I was like, I cannot wait to see what happens. It was so much more than I could have even imagined. And I think that's the kind of thing, like we were saying, that you're going to see is like the people who get it, and can take it and run with it. It's that baton energy we've been talking about, that relay energy of passing the torch. And like, if everyone recognizes where the light's coming from and where it's heading, then it's easy to join that movement. And the people that are going to get left behind are going to choose that. It's not going to be that there's no light shining it. It's that they're choosing not to look in that direction. They're choosing not to listen. And that's just the way I think it always has been. But yeah, I cannot wait to see how things start to evolve.
One of the things I heard on the astrology podcast and their episode, if you want to dive into like the super depth of what 2025 is, it's about 4.5 hour episodes. So take it on if you want to. But one of the things they said in that episode was how when moving pictures came into place, and there was one of the early ones was a train coming right at the audience, and the audience ducked and hit the floor because they thought it was coming into the theater. And how we now look back at that like, oh, how could they think that? But these are the types of leaps that we are coming up to, where we're going to be challenged in new ways. We're going to see new media, new everything about this is going to feel so new. I also heard someone else compare 2027 will be like looking back to 2024, like a sepia toned photo of Victorian women in hoop skirts. Like the amount of change and how quickly it's going to come and how it's going to be so vast is part of what we're trying to convey through all of the astrology coming in 2025 and 2026. It's a lot and it's fast and it's going to be a ride. And it's not all awful and scary. It's not. But in order to create these new things, we have to, of course, break down the old, make new, but we have to plan it too. And that's so much of what this energy for Pisces season, I think, is really about.
Yeah. I think the reason Emily and I have been feeling the creativity, which I'm going to start with the first week of the card, but part of the reason I think that's coming forward is right now, the energy of that creativity is like you need the spark to inspire what it is that's going to come next. You need that inspiration and that vision before it can happen. And I think that's what's kind of coming in now is like a lot of people are now finding that even though they are coming from very different walks of life, their vision is actually pretty similar. It's just coming through in a different way. So I think kind of what we're going to start seeing, and I can feel it in the energy, like people that I wouldn't have expected to be like so excited even by that performance we were talking about. Like I was like, wow, I was impressed that these people that I was like, I don't know if I would have thought that that person would like get it, but they're like, yeah. And like, the variety and diversity in the voices, which actually, just a side note, I will to get into the card, but I saw someone, I think it was probably Fox News or something, but I saw someone who they were complaining that it was all the same race on the stage and how it was like they'd never seen racism like that before on like a large scale. And then the person who was doing, so it was, they were showing the clip, but it was like somebody doing like a video talking about that clip. And they were like, oh, what do you mean? Like diversity, equity, and inclusion? So you would like DEI on the stage is what you're looking for. So it's like the things that even like sometimes the things are so obvious, but like so far from people's brains. And that's the kind of thing where it's like something can go totally over someone's head. And it's like, those are not the people that are going to be leading us forward by any stretch of the imagination. Let's just hold hope that that is the case, that those people, we can be like, okay, you live in that reality, you stay there, and we're going to go on to the next reality. The rest of us will keep going. You can hang out there. They'll stay sepia toned. It'll be like you know what's funny is I was just thinking of movies like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where like some of the characters are cartoons and everyone else is in real life. That's what it's going to feel like. Some people are in the cartoon reality where they only have a certain limited knowledge. They only have the knowledge of that character's show, and then everyone else is going to be in real life. That's literally how I see the reality shaping, where it's like they're still in a reality. Their reality exists. And we're not going to say that they don't live in a reality that other people have awareness of, but it's not the new reality.
That's the best description ever. I love that analogy. I'm going to use that the rest of the year. Thank you for that.
I actually wanted to make a note before I forget that I've changed my remote recharges, my monthly energy sessions this year, because I realized for my energy, doing all of this monthly, plus trying to provide a really in-depth insight was just too much for my energy because my own energy fluctuates quite a bit, as I realized last year. So what I've done, which I'm actually very excited about, is that they're going to be seasonal now instead. So the first one will be in Aries for spring, and it will be on April 3rd. It's still going to be 7 p.m. Eastern. But what I'm doing now is you can purchase the package like before, like for the whole year if you want all of them. But I will do a live session when I'm sending the energy for anybody who does feel more comfortable being present for it. As per usual, you'll be able to receive it anytime, and I will post the replay for it. So I'll do 30 minutes of the actual energy and then 30 minutes to answer questions or if people have anything they want to share that came up in the session, because I realize what I do is very abstract because I don't even use specific Reiki symbols or anything. I'm just using crystals and earth energies. But I just thought it was a way also so that people can come together in the energy if they want, or experience it on their own, however they prefer. And then instead of having just like an email that gets sent out with the PDF, what I'm going to do is it will lead to a blog page that's just for that seasonal thing so that I can actually keep adding stuff. So I don't have the pressure to get all of the information in one day. So you can get the list of the things I used the next day so that it's just easy for me to pop that in for you. But then what I can do is I can send out an email every time I have a new blog post when something new is added, and you'll get it sent right to you. So you don't have to keep remembering to check, but you'll get a few. So that way I feel like it's actually a win-win, because sometimes I get these little inspirations here and there that are like, I just want to write a quick thing about, sage or cedar that's coming through, and I just want to share that, or maybe it'll be a poem. I don't know, because I'm leaving it pretty open, but I feel like it's a way where we can still have a bit of everything. We can have a really short gathering when everyone's energy is together. We can have that immediate next day list of everything that came through so that you can experience the energy on your own again and do a deep dive if you want. But then it also, for those themes and things that come up, it gives me a bit more time to do them each as like their own article, or to just take a bit more time with them. And then we have a few months to keep exploring that energy and seeing how it starts to lead into the next. And I feel like it's going to be better for my energy because it allows me to really dive deeper. And that's the thing I'm fighting with, is I have a short timeline to get things to you. But I feel like there's more that Spirit wants me to uncover about these themes. So then there's also the opportunity for you to comment, or like for us to have an exchange throughout the few months of like how that's playing out before we get to the next one. And I feel very expansive about this. And then it keeps everything in one space, even, in that Virgo energy for me, is I can be very flowy because everything is in Squarespace and it is connected to my newsletter now. I switched my newsletter over, and all in one is just feeling a lot more expansive, where I feel like I can do more things within that space now.
Oh, I'm super excited about this. I had no idea you were doing all that shifting in the background. And yeah, I will be there. This is going to be fantastic because your monthly dives were so deep. Sometimes I felt like even I couldn't assimilate everything that you brought through. So to know that it'll come out in little bits and there'll be ways to feel supported throughout, it's super exciting. I love that. Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It was one of those things where I actually missed a couple near the end of the year because I had so much going on with the move and I was processing when I lost Tulip. I had a lot at the end of last year. And I want so badly to dive into the energy, but I was like, well, I sent one out in Libra, which was the first month of the season. And then I didn't send another one to like Capricorn. And I was like, actually, that felt kind of nice having that breathing room because I felt like I processed a lot and had more to bring to the next one. So I appreciate that. I think it's time to I made up the system. It's me that created it. I also can change it. Again, mind blowing information. But when you make something up out of nowhere, sometimes you need that outside influence to be like, oh, it wasn't that serious. It actually wasn't a physical structure. It was in my brain and I made it all up. So I feel like it's really going to be fun. And actually, Emily, I just wanted to ask too when your next Cards and Cosmos meeting is going to be, because that's another thing where like we're always putting these energies together. And I feel like having a group to chat about it is such a great idea.
Well, thank you for asking. I feel terrible because we're keeping our listeners so captive this month, but I came up a little bit in January when I did a collective like wheel of the year. We got together, we talked about the astrology, pulled cards together. There were about 15 of us, and it was so lovely to share the similarities, just to be in that collective co-working energy. Gonna do anything else with it, but I had so many people reach out and just really a lot of nudges to maybe do this monthly, kind of like we do with the podcast. So on the first Saturday of each month, I'm gonna have the Cards and Cosmos monthly club. Say that 10 times fast. And we're really just going to get together. I'm going to give you a brief highlight of what the astrology is, some key dates. I'm going to come up with a custom spread each month for you to pull some cards. And then to pull cards for one another, because I think it's so important to lean into and learn your intuition and trust your card. And so there'll be some small breakout groups. We'll come back together and talk and share. It's going to be a really fun, just lovely 90 minutes together on a Saturday to kind of anchor in for the month. So the very first one comes up March 1st, that very first Saturday. And like I said, the first one is $22 if you sign up early as an early bird special until February 24th. And then they go to $33 as a drop in, or you can buy a 3-month package and get that $22 rate. So they're very affordable and just a nice way for us to come together. I've already got people signed up and coming. It's barely even been announced. I was still making tweaks on the back end. So I'm excited. And Andrea, I'm hopeful will be there because I want her to share some of her incredible, brilliant tarot knowledge and numerology knowledge. So it's going to be fun. It's at least something new. Like you said, we created the systems. We can also break the systems and make something new, which completely fits to this energy. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yes, I will be there. That sounds so fun. I can't wait. I love hearing other people's interpretations of the cards and how it's going to tie in for everyone. And I love when themes come up. That's one of my favorite things is when a bunch of people pull cards and the same cards or the same themes come out multiple times. I feel like it just like feeds my soul where I'm like, yes, we're all connected. This is a real energy that we all have access to. And I think it's that validation, like you said, when you stick with that intuition and then it resonates with other people, there's just a certain magical energy that I think we all need at least once a month to be able to have that boost for the next few weeks.
Okay, Stein, cards, I'm ready.
Might be longer than we anticipated this episode, but it's for good reason. There's a lot that's connecting through this month specifically that I think is going to set us up for the next couple months. So for the beginning of Pisces season, for the 18th to the 22nd, I pulled the Knight of Wands, and I have not seen this card come up much at all for a long time. And so having this fire energy, I know there's a lot of Aries energy sneaking in already. And I think this really is like the beat to your own drum. There's the horse in the background. There's this sense of like freedom. And I think it's like a protective energy in a way. Like I have this energy of like protection around it where it's like protect those things that really light the fire under you. Like don't let people distract you. Distraction feels like it's going to be the challenge of this energy is like if you are really feeling creative and you need to get in the flow, do whatever it takes to keep that fire going and to stay on your own path and like to see where that's leading you. And I think for the energy that I've been feeling myself even, it's like you can easily slip back into old patterns and like go into like, oh, I should be doing this instead. This is actually something that's been on my list for a while. But if you are trying to move forward into a new reality, if you're trying to create something new, you have to invest, and sacrifice is part of it. And I think there's that energy of like the night that keeps like moving forward to me as that like protection. But like a night is like sometimes sacrificing themselves for the good. And it's not that we are going to lose out on anything, but the sacrifice is that, yes, maybe you won't make as much money if you aren't taking on a million extra jobs, or you're not doing, all of the extra things. Maybe the dishes won't get done. Maybe, you won't be doing everything to the full capacity you have been. But this new thing that you're creating is going to have a huge energy that you would not be able to see if you didn't take the time now to really nurture it. And while that energy's there, if you think about all the influences we're going to be talking about this month, but even right now, what Emily's been sharing, like when you have these really rare and interesting transits happening, you do have to kind of take advantage of it. The way she was saying, like with the astrology, when you know what's coming, use it to your advantage. Don't just like keep doing the same old if that's not going to be productive for you. And I think that the idea of productivity is very different than what I would have assumed a few years ago I'd be seeing as a super Capricorn person. But I think like productivity is like just anything that's moving you forward and into action on something that is passion driven for you. And I think that's why, like it being the Knight of Wands, like Wands is a fire sign and it's starting something. Like it has very strong Aries energy to me. But what's really interesting too is like in the image for this, it has four posts around her. And then she has the drum that has a fire, which to me, that's a five energy, having that fire. But without it, it's still stability. Like the Four of Wands is like the house. It's like the card before this. It's like the one where you have the stability. You have the four walls around you. It's often considered like marriage, commitment, contract. Like we have these foundations that are there, but we just need to push ourselves a little bit further to make sure we're not just recreating the same blueprint we already had. It's like, yes, we now are stronger and we can do it quickly. Like we can build a foundation quicker because we've rebuilt for ourselves so many times. But it's like, make sure you have that extra fire so that it's like a new version and you're not just creating the same thing that you just created. Even for me, like I have a style of printmaking I've been doing, but it's like more of a productivity thing because I can do it quickly and people like it and I can get it done, but it doesn't do anything for me. So I'm pushing myself to go back into the processes and the more messy processes that I enjoy more, and I'm already seeing like a very different result.
I just want to reiterate that Andrea and I don't discuss the cards and the astrology before we start. How many times you've listened to this, it doesn't matter. I just needed to say that. Because as we move into Pisces season on the 18th, right, the sun is going to dip her toes in just after midnight on the East Coast. And Pisces season lasts until March 20th. Now, this is the final zodiac sign of the astrological year. Remember, it's ruled by the fish. Pisces is highly compassionate and intuitive. And that is a major theme throughout 2025 and even into 2026. With the sun here for the next 4 weeks, we're invited to deeply explore our own inner realms, right? Because too often we find ourselves powering forward with hard work and determination to be what we think is needed in order to succeed. But this is a shadow side of Virgo. Remember, Virgo is opposite Pisces. And what happens here is where we find ourselves doubling down on old methods where hard work equaled huge rewards. And now we're deep in the waters, right? The North Node is even in Pisces right now. So we've got this double energy. We're really trying to understand trust, surrender, faith, that things are intangible and that they require feelings rather than actions to substantiate in some way. So, how can you bring a deeper meaning to your life? What would you do with this one precious life if you could do anything? How has your mindset limited you? This window of Pisces energy is truly an opportunity to begin living as though you already are doing and being those things. The 19th, the moon is going to continue in Scorpio. I always feel like Scorpio moon makes me a little like skeptic. So if you find yourself trying out something and you're skeptical already, I always say blame it on the moon. On the 20th, we kind of have an information and know-it-all overload. Mercury in dreamy Pisces is going to square off with pushy Jupiter in Gemini. This energy has been building. So even before you listen to this, it will have been building. Everywhere you turn, people are quick. They've got judgments and hasty, wild conclusions. Even if you're absolutely sure your gut instinct is spot on, you're going to want to stay flexible and check your sources. Don't overpromise what you can deliver and be really realistic about your time and energy. Pisces is going to have your mindset spinning into all the wild ideas and all the options. And Jupiter in Gemini is going to give you more evidence to support all of these wild ideas. So really double down. Take your time and double check your facts. The moon is going to move into Sagittarius in the morning. And if anything has come up since the full moon, you might see it in a new light in some way. And then on the 22nd, one of the signature events of 2025 and all of February, as Neptune joins with the North Node in Pisces. So let's break this down. The North Node invites us to embrace an opposite view of what we're accustomed to, like embracing the head and tail of the dragon. The opposites are the same pole. It's still the dragon. You're just looking at both ends at the same time, okay? So Neptune, also being in Pisces, it blows away boundaries. It invites us to connect with our intuition and altered states of awareness. So how can we create a new vision for our collective future if we don't take the time to dream up what we want? And I think this is so important right now as we're watching things be dismantled. We know that things are going to look so different in the future. What we probably feel like is like a carbonated bottle that's been shaken too hard and it's full up of pent-up energy, and it's like a tidal wave might overtake you at any time. So take the time to escape, but through healthy outlets, and use this time to really lean into the dream vision of your life and even the version that you're maybe too afraid of that could even be possible. The universe is listening. And I've said this a few times as we've recorded, things are going to start manifesting very quickly. And if you aren't clear on your mindset, you're going to stay in Roger Rabbit cartoon land and not the 3D world. So that is the first card. Here we go.
It's true. We never, I even tell Emily, I don't even look up the dates, or I don't want to have anything. And I ask her every time. I know the general dates for each season, but it's how we start every time, where I'm like, okay, what day do we start on and what day do we end on? Because I literally don't want to know anything before I get started, unless it's like general knowledge. Like I know eclipses are coming and stuff, but like I don't look anything up because I'm like, I need to be very clear that it's just my own energy when I start this. And so when I actually pulled these two cards back to back, so from the 23rd to March 1st, I pulled the Page of Swords, which this still is in that same energy of like inspiration, but this is air sign as opposed to the fire sign. So this is, I think, some of what Emily was just talking about, like that energy of like Jupiter and Gemini, like more information coming and doing a deep dive into something. So now that you have the inspiration and that Knight of Wands has really like fueled you, it is a good idea to do a deep dive and look into, anything else you need to learn, or like different sources. Like what I've been doing, it's part of my process, but before I can make anything, I look at other artists, I watch documentaries, I'm taking in information constantly that's inspiring to me, so that even when the process feels frustrating, you still have that knowledge and that energy fueling you. And I think for people who are looking at this from a collective perspective, it means looking at history, following creators that are making patterns between other times similar things have happened, and how we overcome that and what the next steps can be. Think those things, as much as some people will say, oh, that's too scary, I don't want to look. But it actually is very hopeful, because it's like, oh, well, other countries, other places, other times, we have overcome this kind of energy. And it's inspiring to know that it's because people come together, people do make art and gather, and all of these things are inspiring. So the more you can just let yourself do a deep dive right now, while that energy is to whatever you're interested in. It doesn't have to be a big collective revolution that you're into. Maybe you're just trying a new art process, or maybe you want to take a course. Like maybe there's something you're just genuinely interested in. And I think because in the image here, which you'll see in my newsletter, but she's walking on a tightrope, but it's like she's not even aware that she's in a predicament. She's so focused on where she's going that there's no obstacle. Like she's just floating with ease. And I think when I think back to any time that I've had an easy transition into a big change, it's when I haven't actually thought about what the problems could be. I just am so focused on learning whatever I need to learn to get there. It's like when the phrase where they say, like, if you're offered something, you say yes and figure out how to do it later. I've always done that. I've gotten promotions before and things where I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing now. How am I going to do the next part? But I figured out, you know? And even like the thing that I've referenced many times on the podcast, the biggest change that I made was when I knew I wanted to go to school and I changed from interior design to art. I only applied to the one school and I got a job and moved before I got accepted. And never once did I question it. I was just so sure. And I think you move away from that, and I have moved away from that over time. And I've like followed other paths and tried to make things fit. But I think I'm back at a stage now where I can't do that. I have to listen to whatever feels in my body. And I think the last couple months, it's come in a lot to be like in your body again and to like really focus on like how you're feeling. That's why emotion is so important. And like Emily even brought that up, like even in terms of like manifestation, like the things that you're emotionally attached to have a different energy than the things that you're just thinking about or that you're following along with or like someone's suggesting to you. And I've even done that where people have suggested things that are very aligned with me. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like something I should do. But the more I feel into it, I'm like, you know what? I think this is actually a way of that person gifting me the opportunity to see that I actually have something more, even more creative than I could have imagined. And I think because my North Node is in Pisces also, it's like I'm getting it very amplified in my energy. I'm so Capricorn. And then to have my South Node in Virgo, where it's like even that, like my default is a spreadsheet. Like I really don't stand a chance most of the time. So the fact that I became an artist at all is actually pretty intensely wild. I'm actually pretty determined to make that happen. So like, why would I stop now? You know, why would I limit myself at this point when it's like there's so much energy supporting the bigger dreams? And I think because I've had unexpected space for that, I'm taking advantage. While I have that space, who knows what I'm going to end up doing a month from now at this point? Things change so quickly right now and they're manifesting so quickly. And I think that's why this page of swords, it has Gemini energy. It always has to me. And I think that's a part of it is like being able to quickly see both sides of something, to be able to analyze with discernment. But that discernment and that feeling in your body is going to be guiding where the deep dive needs to happen. And I think that will be different for everyone. And that serves the collective. If everyone focuses on their thing that they're so strong in, like if you're ignoring your gifts and what comes naturally to you, other people struggle to get to the point of barely being able to do something that you could do in your sleep, that tightrope, right? And so where your strength is, just trust, even if it doesn't seem like it's productive in a traditional sense, it is. There's somebody that needs to see you doing that so that they can move forward.
Before I jump in, I want to say that image also brought up to me the idea of the fool, but the fool with the knowledge behind it. Do you think that matches?
Yeah, that's 100% the energy I sort of feel with that. Like the pages have like a youthful energy to them. And a lot of times they're messengers, which is why I said, like, I think people showing me, like, oh, like, wow, you tried this, this feels aligned with you. And then it's me that has to say, okay, like now that I have this knowledge, maybe it is me. But it's like, if you think of it instead of like, oh no, I have to let that go or like, whatever, if you think of it as I've mastered this level of it. So actually, I think yes, that is very aligned with me, but I'm very good at that. And now I think I can actually challenge myself with new information. I think it is the fool. It's almost at the end of this version. And it's like, okay, let me just push myself a little bit harder to get the absolute max out of this before I start a new cycle.
Oh, I loved that. Okay. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. All right, let's dive in. February 23rd, we've got Mercury and Mars, and they're going to meet in a lucky trine early today, only hours before Mars wraps up its 11-week retrograde. So in this last kind of window, Mars gets a nudge from an emotional Mercury in Pisces to bring those pent-up emotions right to the surface. Others are going to feel open to listening, but make sure they have the capacity before you open up your floodgates. Has your winter been feeling a little more frustrating than usual? Yes. Maybe that's a trick question. Yes, yes, yes. But for the last 10 weeks, we've had Mars in retrograde, and it's been incredibly frustrating for many of us, particularly if your rising sign is Aries or Scorpio or has some connection to the planet of Mars as your ruling planet. It's really slowed things down. As it's backed through Leo in December and then through Cancer in January and February, it's now paused. And what's kind of happened with this is it's like if you leave a felt tip pen on the paper for too long before you lift it up, it like bleeds out. And that's this energy that Mars has had in Cancer. It's like the fear of protection and safety and what's next and who do I trust has just been amplified. So now that it's paused, it's going to start retracing its steps for the third and final time in this next 6-month window. So like a rubber band that maybe has been wound too tight, we're ready to burst into action and find momentum again. Until April 17th, Mars will be in Cancer, inviting you to banish tension in your own house by first decluttering, redecorating, and making sure everyone has the space they need to stretch out for those new activities like Andrea was mentioning. Yes, we've done all the regular things and the dishes need to be done and the housework and getting ready for spring, but how can you do that and then get ready to leave space for other bigger things that are coming? On the 24th, we have the moon continuing in Capricorn. On the 25th, the energy might feel a little prickly compared to the energy we've had because mouthy Mercury is going to meet up with restrictive Saturn. But both planets are in watery Pisces, and it's going to be far too easy to say the quiet thing out loud. On the other hand, this energy can be great at helping you to focus on those dreamy projects that you started. Lean into some self-care. What are the things that are lighting you up in new ways? With the moon floating into Aquarius just after midnight, the whole day is going to be flooded with those kind of Aquarian idealistic virtues. On the 26th, you are preparing for the Pisces new moon that's going to close out the month. So use the 26th to really work on your mindset. Take a moment to reiterate the things that you want to start to manifest, because it's really important that you have a clear vision of what you're calling in. On the 27th, the moon dives into Pisces at 3:46 a.m. and the new moon is at 7:45 p.m. So you've got some of that daytime energy to use. Use amethyst to help increase your inner power and invite powerful messages from your dreams. This is a once a year new moon, right? We only have this in Pisces once a year. And it's important to lean into Pisces and remind yourself that connection to the divine is always innately yours. It's always there. And with Mercury also in Pisces, it's got a harmonious angle with Uranus and Taurus. So there's an opportunity to make something that's just a dream into reality. But remember, Uranus and Taurus is a little electrically charged. It may look different, it may feel different, but there's a connection there to making it firm. And then don't forget the North Node and Neptune are still joined, so they're helping you to envision the best version of your magical future. This connection, I just want to reiterate, between the North Node and Neptune lasts for about a week. So this is an underlying transit that's kind of flavoring everything. And then on the 28th, we usher in March tomorrow. And again, I bring up this freeway, like we're reaching the cruising speed and we're ready to like hit the freeway at this point. Things are happening. This is the last day of that North Node Neptune conjunction. So use this energy to your benefit, connect to your angels, your guides, whoever you really feel supported to and by from your higher frequencies. And then make that an anchor point, because that's the feeling of connection and love, and that you are the bridge between this realm, their realm, and Earth. And so I think it's going to be so important when things start moving quickly and how kind of hectic things are going to be in the next 4 to 6 months. You're going to want to revisit this anchor point of what is your dream vision, and having it kind of concrete and cemented here is just a final punctuation on the end of February.
I love that. I I feel like for the next week here from March 2nd to 8th, it's kind of picking up on that energy a bit. It is kind of like it feels like a pause, like a moment to regroup. It's the 7 of Cups. That dreams versus reality energy feels very strong here. It's a 7, so I feel like there is a lot of spirit influence of like having things come to you, whether it's downloads, opportunities, but the idea is some of the cups have really beautiful things in them. Some of them may have things that are not so great. Sometimes we don't know until we turn the cup over. But overall, just paying attention to whether something is aligned with your dreams, whether something's an illusion, something really isn't what it seems to be. Overall, the energy just feels like we have a lot of choices coming up. And I think that is in part because of that energy of things manifesting quickly. So, because we've had 2 weeks in a row here in the tarot energy of like a lot of inspiration, a lot of chance to do that dreaming that Emily was talking about, that Neptune energy. Now it's like, oh, hang on. Now I actually have to do the thing. And, sometimes we don't know how to do that. And so we have to really pay attention to those opportunities that are being presented. And then if none of the cups really seem good or things aren't really feeling aligned, then sometimes you have to create it yourself and like choose a direction to go in. And I think that's the piece that can be kind of sticky with the 7 of Cups is sometimes you don't know which one to choose, so you choose nothing and you just go back to what you were doing, and I think the thing is, with the energy we have right now, we don't really have that as an option anymore in this kind of reality that we're in. Otherwise, you do end up in that Roger Rabbit world where, yes, you're still existing with everyone else, but you just won't feel that connection to where you're going. You won't feel that personal connection to your own life and your own work. You'll just feel like you're going through the motions. So whatever opportunities are coming up, really sit with them and like give yourself that time to like be in your body, be present with it and feel into, am I choosing this because it's where I'm going? Or am I choosing it because it's where I've been? Am I choosing it because it's the only thing in front of me right now? Like I think sometimes we're quick to grab onto anything that comes up just because we need a change. But it doesn't mean it would be a bad choice. Again, sometimes you have to try a few things out to see what sticks. And like there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of being human. But if you have the knowledge and you have the intuition and you really do tune into that connection to spirit, sometimes you can almost fast track where you just know which opportunity is right, or you don't even need to look under the cups. You just grab one and go because you know exactly what you're doing with it. And I think we don't give ourselves enough credit sometimes with that ability to make those choices. Sometimes we know exactly what we want to do, but we are like, oh, no one else has given me permission, or like that hasn't been handed to me. And it's like sometimes you have to just do that yourself. Like you need to just make the tea and do it yourself, you don't have to wait for it to be handed to you. And I think we've been somewhat traumatized in the last while where it's like, yeah, maybe in the last 5 years, everything has felt really hard and it hasn't been a reality. But I think because we have to admit things are changing for a reason and there are opportunities coming up that didn't even exist, 5 years ago. There's a lot of opportunities to connect with people and to um, create things in a faster, more efficient way that we couldn't before. So why limit yourself? We keep saying this, but that is the energy right now. It's like if you have an idea, you're inspired by something and you really want it, then go for it. Things will manifest. Sometimes it is jumping a little bit before the safety net appears, but I think that connection to spirit feels really strong with this decision. So some of you may have a very specific opportunity that's coming up or a very specific choice you have to make. And that might be you know, making you start to almost create options that aren't there just to sort of escape and not have to make the choice or delay it. And again, we have free will. We can do that, but then we're not going to really enjoy it when that decision has to come up again or when, the consequences of that show up and it's 10 times bigger than it would have been if we dealt with it now. So just paying attention is for both things. It's for, solving things and clearing things out, but it's also for creating really big, magical new things too. And so, sometimes it feels like it's all doom and gloom, but sometimes those cleanup activities are actually making space for the bigger thing to come through.
It's amazing to me when you describe the 7 of Cups energy, how accurately to me it describes Venus retrograde. And what's interesting is that like Mars retrograde, right, just ended at the end of February. And I think we have 5 days before Venus goes retrograde. So literally, that's why I was really putting that punctuation mark on the end of February because March 1st, it goes into retrograde. And what's interesting about this particular Venus transit, right? Venus and Mars do not go retrograde every year. It's about once every 18-ish months. So the fact that they're doing it in the same year, back to back, nearly overlapping each other is important. And we've also got this window now of this amplified look at Venus in Pisces and Aries, which is where everything is highlighted this year, that lasts from January 2nd to June 5th. So we've been building, right? January 2nd is when Venus moved into Pisces. It stations retrograde, or excuse me, it enters the pre-shadow part around the 24th of January. Then it moves into Aries on the 4th. It stations retrograde on the 1st of March. It retrogrades back into Pisces on the 27th before it finally goes direct April 12th. But then it's got to backtrack through Pisces until April 30th. And it's got to back all the way to where it started in Aries by May 16th. And then it doesn't finish that out and move into Taurus until June 5th. So all of that to say, this is really an important window to get clear on what you value, to look at those things. A 6-week window where it's not the time to rush or splurge, or, you might feel the call to like chop all your hair off or cut it or do these big, massive things because you're like, I just need something to change. So really understand, where is that impulse coming from? What is the underlying emotion? Now that Mars is kind of moving forward, you might want to like, God, something has to change, but make sure that that fire is tampered with some realistic approach to what those dreams are. Because if you're just acting and leaping in new ways, it's not going to support what's coming in. So that's March 1st, right? Buckle up. We're on the freeway now, people. On the 2nd, we've got Mercury conjunct. So it's joined up in the sky with Neptune and Pisces. This is a dreamy, intuitive vibe. It's really helping you to tap back into that brainstorming and connection. But now we've got this Venus retrograde issue where Neptune's haze is going to blur the lines a little between reality and illusion. And so it might be hard to discern the facts. Be gentle with yourself. Lean into your empathy and your intuition. And if something reoccurring pops up over and over, right? Like the gopher with the mallet game, why is it coming up? Trust the insights that drop in around that, and maybe don't make a 180-degree pivot, but recognize it, embrace it, see what it's about before you make a giant shift. On the 3rd, Mercury is going to move into Aries. This is going to amplify that fieriness. It's going to get bold and direct. Conversations are going to speed up. Your mindset is going to be like, something's got to give. Everyone's going to have something to say. I really wanted to encourage you to use this momentum to speak your truth, but not to forget the art of listening. Because it's really easy for us to be like, well, no, this is how I feel, and I'm on my soapbox, and I need you to listen. The moon is going to move into Taurus, and that's going to help give at least a little bit of a grounding influence. But if you do share your words, just use bullet points, be clear, concise, and really intentional. On the 4th, we really don't have anything coming in. We have a little bit of a quiet day. The 5th, we have Mercury in Aries, and it's going to be in this really beautiful kind of harmonious angle with Jupiter and Gemini. It's going to bring a splurge of inspiration and expansive ideas. This is one of those days where I feel like you can't turn your brain off. Brainstorming sessions could really be incredible, but it might just you might brainstorm for hours and still only get one idea. Don't take on everything. Watch your energy levels. And make sure that your plans are really realistic and manageable. The moon is going to shift into Gemini. This is going to add to that quickening of the mind. On the 6th, we have the first quarter moon in Gemini. And this is going to be paired with a moon-Jupiter conjunction, which brings an optimistic boost. Conversations today could feel really expansive. So let them be a little playful. We've got enough other hot stuff going on. On the 7th, we have the sun in Pisces trine Mars in Cancer. This is lucky in some ways. This is action meets intuition. This harmonious energy is really perfect for creative problem solving or projects that require both that focus and flow. So I really encourage you to trust your gut and take steps towards what feels aligned, like Andrea was saying. Yes, I might want to do this, but actually I've mastered that. What am I looking at moving into instead? Really look at things through an emotional depth and nurture yourself in some way. And then we are quiet on the 8th, so I'm going to let you bring up the next card.
Other than the Page of Swords, which kind of I feel like went along with the Knight of Wands, it's all wands and cups again. It's all fire and water again. And that makes so much sense for everything that we've been talking about with that Aries and Pisces fluctuation. And I think because this next week from March 9th to 15th, I pulled a wands card again. We're going from the cups, that emotional energy back into the fire energy. And with this one, though, it's the 9 of Wands. And I think because we're feeling so much coming to a point that this is the point where you're at that last step, like you're almost there, and it's easy to feel like it's not coming and to try and change direction out of frustration. But I think we need to remember that sometimes it's like that opportunity to just like reflect and trust and put the next foot forward and keep going. That feeling can be really uncomfortable because sometimes it feels like you're just going through the motions when you're like, okay, nothing's happening. I've been doing this for a while. But it is that energy of like the ship's about to come in, like you're almost there, like you're about to cross the finish line. And I think we do sometimes turn around right before that point. And I think because like the 10 of wands is being overwhelmed and having too much on your plate. So I think there's a fine line between trusting that the next thing's going to come versus just doing everything again because you don't trust that that other thing's coming and just picking up a lot of unnecessary energy. And I think too, because it just feels like this week is going to be very intense. There's going to be a lot going on, a lot of things coming to a completion. The 9 is also a completion card of like getting to the end of a cycle. And so try to be mindful of like anything that you need to release during this time. Try to keep that future vision in mind. So whatever choices you are making, whatever is happening is still moving you forward. And again, you're not reverting back to the previous cycle. The wands is interesting because I feel like a lot of the other suits, there's like an even flow that goes through all of the numbers, like to get through to the end of the cycle. But with the wands, it feels like to me a little bit chaotic, which is not surprising because it's the fire energy. But you go from like the 8 of Wands, which is like all the energy moving you forward if you're like moving in the right direction, to this point where you're just sort of waiting, which does kind of feel the same, but it feels like two different energies. And then the 10, instead of like the 10 of Cups, is like emotional fulfillment, and the 10 of Pentacles is like you have it all. I feel like the 10 of Wands is like, yeah, you have a lot of stuff, but is it too much? Like, did I take on too much? I think that's why it has a different energy to me. It's like your eyes being bigger than your stomach. Maybe everything feels exciting. Like Emily was saying, like that 7 of Cups and like that idea of having all of these options and everything sounds exciting, but really taking the time to make sure that like as you're completing this cycle and moving on to the next, that you're only taking what's necessary because you'll pick up other things along the way. I don't even play video games, but I just got the image in my head of when people like obsessively collect all the items and then they get the actual item they need and they have too many of these random objects that you wouldn't even use. Maybe you do need to leave room for the things that you don't even know you're going to need yet. You don't know what the future challenges are going to be. So why stock yourself up for solutions to old problems that you're probably not going to have anymore? So it just feels like that moment where like trust that the next thing is coming, things are manifesting, but it might just be a bit of a chaotic week and a chaotic finish to this cycle.
I think trust is like the theme of the year, and it comes up so many times. I think Pisces is really putting a highlight on that. And what's fascinating to me is we always think that Aries is the start. Like everything's been completed and wrapped up in Pisces, and then Aries is the fool, and off we go again. But the nuance that's missed sometimes is that the only reason you feel brave enough to step out into that action is because there's some fulfillment, because there's a greater understanding. And that comes from trust that I'm going to start this business. I'm going to jump out of the nest, whatever that thing is. comes from trust, comes from inner knowing. And that's really so much of what we're really meant to dive into, particularly this first part of March. Um, the 9th, the moon is going to move into Leo. And the great thing about Leo energy is what makes you feel truly alive. Like, lean into those passions, lean into the things that are bringing you joy right now, even and despite all the things that may be happening and occurring around us. It's not that it's bypassing. It's not that we're not meant to be involved. I don't want people to think that we're saying that either. But be responsible with your energy, because we are going to have so much fire coming in as well. It's super easy to burn out. And that's one thing you don't want to do this year. On the 10th, we have no major aspects coming in. This is just a really nice time to ground, maybe take care of those simple tasks. On the 11th, we have Mercury conjunct that retrograde Venus in Aries. This is an opportunity where conversations may flow really naturally, blending quick thinking with a little bit of charm. Venus retrograde asks you to revisit old connections or re-examine your values, particularly in terms of your relationships. Speak your truth, but remain mindful of Aries impulsivity. It's a good day to slow down and listen as well. This will be the first of 3 Mercury retrogrades in 2025. And this one is going to straddle Aries and Pisces. And so it's coming. We're kind of in that shadow period a little bit already. So beware of a tendency to slip into denial or gloss over things. On the 12th, the sun is going to be conjunct Saturn in Pisces. So both the sun and Saturn together there in Pisces. And it's kind of getting closer to the final degree. So there's something amplifying about that as well. This is a dose of responsibility, right? Saturn wants you to focus and manage your time. But Pisces is like, what time? Time doesn't exist. The reality checks aren't always fun, but they are necessary. And this energy is really going to encourage you to set those long-term goals. But it's also a reminder to not be too hard on yourself. Saturn can take it too far. Stay practical and grounded. The moon is going to move into Virgo, and that's going to bring up some of those shadow sides of like, well, I have to plan. I have to be prepared, when we're actually meant to be leaning into trust. So work on that balance. It's not perfect. Balance isn't perfect. On the 13th, we have the sun in Pisces is going to be in a harmonious sextile with Uranus in Taurus. This is going to deliver a burst of creativity and maybe unexpected opportunities. Today's energy is really going to reward flexibility and willingness to try new approaches. Unexpected insights or opportunities might come your way, especially if you're open to new things. But remember, flexibility is key. Like Andrea was talking about, even with the last card. Lean into the unexpected because you might be ready for that challenge. And then we have the full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo on March 14th. This is happening at 23 degrees of Virgo. So if you have anything particularly in your chart at 23 degrees of Virgo, it's important. This might really impact you. And this is eclipse season, right? We've kind of been in the window of eclipse since about March 7th is when that opens, and then it closes in April. The thing about this one, this is the very first time Virgo's energy is going to be in the spotlight because we've now shifted the nodes. This one is going to be really focusing on organization, healing, and the art of letting go. What habits, routines, or mindsets are no longer serving your highest good. This is your cosmic cue to clear the clutter, whether it's your physical space, your emotional baggage, your outdated workflows, whatever it is. This is the first of the Virgo eclipse since 2016. And it asks you to take a hard look at your health and your habits. Are you overworking yourself or sacrificing balance for perfection? I literally talked to my therapist yesterday about perfection, so I'm on point. Virgo's sharp analytical energy helps you refine the details of your life, from how you structure your day to the ways you take care of your body and mind. On the emotional front, clarity around relationships or work-life boundaries might come up, but they might come up in order to help you release the patterns that no longer align with your well-being. So use this energy to create a sustainable pattern and really release the things that aren't working anymore. Um, One of the things I would just like to highlight about this is that Virgo loves precision. So focus on manageable shifts that snowball into bigger transformations. Because remember, Venus is in retrograde. So it's like, oh, I'm going to cut off my hair and make my morning routine easier. Might not be like careful with what comes up. And then one last thing for this week, Andrea, March 15th, Mercury goes retrograde the day after the first eclipse. So it's going to station retrograde in Aries before it backs into Pisces. Hello, wands and cups, which means it's time to slow down and double check the details. So now we're going to have Venus and Mercury together, retrograde. Communication is going to slow. Tech glitches might come up and tempers might flare. Now, Mercury retrograde is one of those things that has really gained a lot of attention in popular astrology. And I just want to remind you, we literally have anywhere from 3 to 5 every single year. So watch again your mindset. If you are looking for the problems, they're going to arise. When I rode dirt bikes with my husband, it was a short window. I was a newlywed. It's a long story. But one of the things he always said is if you look at the tree, you're going to run into the tree. Like, right? That's what you're focusing on. It happens in bicycles, any of the things. If the little kid is looking like at the car, they're going to hit the car. I want you to remember that during this Mercury retrograde. If you are looking for the problems, they will arise. If you think a problem is going to come and it may shift my balance, but it's not the end of the world, I'm not being punished, right? The stars don't come in and say, ha, we're going to make your life miserable. They're neutral. They're like, here's some energy. Here's a pattern. It's like a weather forecaster saying, there's a chance of anywhere between 1 and 7 inches. You might get a band of 7 inches. You might get a quarter of an inch. You just don't know. So treat this retrograde with a little bit of tenderness. Double down, slow down, check your plans, choose your words with care, and you'll be okay.
Yes, we don't always have to be looking for problems. There's enough going on. Why look for more? Honestly, at this point, I would choose to lean into that trust, being a little delusional. Which brings me to my next point, which is from March 16th to the 20th. I pulled the Page of Cups, one of our favorite cards. And it is kind of that energy. It's leaning into the positive and the unexpected. And the pages bring us the energy of a messenger. And so the fact that Mercury is going retrograde and that is like a messenger sort of energy with being Mercury, I just feel like this is the opportunity to look for people that are going to bring good news to you and look for the opportunities to connect with people in a positive way and to be creative, leaning into that Pisces energy. It's at the end of the sign. It's right before we get into Aries season. So why not make the most of that last few days? We're already going to be feeling a lot of influences from Aries. We have a lot of fire coming around. So why not lean into that dreamy energy and really go back to those visions, like really re-ground yourself in the visions. It's like an odd phrase, but ground yourself in the dreams. Like make sure that when you have those bursts of energy that are going to come and you have that fire energy behind you, that it's fueling you towards that dream. And I think that trust that anything can happen. Again, this comes up with eclipse season a lot, that energy of we tend to think doom and gloom, like what horrible thing is going to get burned down in our life. But we also forget that that energy hits everyone differently. And why couldn't it be something really great coming in unexpectedly? Why couldn't it be all of the work you're putting in gets seen in a new way? Like maybe it is opening up new opportunities. And by changing your focus of the day-to-day tasks and the way you're doing things and the thing that kind of is blah and keeping you stuck, maybe you're going to come up with a shortcut, or maybe you're going to be able to delegate something, or hire a maid service. Who knows? Maybe something is going to free up energy so that you are able to make a big change. Or maybe, again, just a big opportunity could be coming your way. And I think that Page of Cups energy, it has a magical quality to it to me where it's like you really don't know what could happen. So why not start thinking of all the things that would be magical if they did happen? Why not put that energy out there? And even if it doesn't happen, at least it's a little break for your brain when all the other stuff is happening, you know? Like it doesn't hurt once in a while to let yourself dream and to let that guide you. Sometimes it'll give you a new creative idea. Maybe that'll actually help you solve a problem in that dream space. And so I would actually say even looking at your dreams this week, like having a dream journal or something, try to capture even throughout the month some of those little insights that might be coming through. Because I think as much as Pisces gets that energy of being too flowy or going with the flow or escaping too much, with the balance of this axis of Virgo and Pisces, it's a axis that I personally feel has the most differences between the two. And I think it hits us the hardest. Some of the other ones, like Cancer and Capricorn, they're both like the parents. One's trying to provide, one's trying to care. And it's like they have the same goals. Whereas I feel like, as much as they may have the same goals, Pisces and Virgo have completely opposite approaches when you go to the extremes. And I think we have to remember that we do need both. We can't be all work and planning because what are you planning for? If you're just planning to be bored, are you planning to do the same thing forever? Like, what is it you're planning towards? And I think, like, when you have a dream, you need to ground it in a plan, but like, you have to have both. So if you don't know where you're going, what are you planning for? So, like, yeah, maybe. Perhaps the reason you're not getting anywhere is because you're not even dreaming enough. You're not thinking big enough of what could happen in order to give you that spark of what to do next. You can't take action when there's nothing to do.
Oh, I love that. The image that popped in when you were talking just now is about what it's like when we do mediumship, right? And how you have to remember the difference between connecting to higher energy versus being human, right? Because it's lovely to be connected to higher frequencies and it can sometimes suck to be human, but we have to find that balance in between. And where do we find that balance? When we move into the heart, when we move into our heart center and we move forward with and from the heart. And so I think it's fascinating that Venus is retrograde during this point. So we're like being forced to re-examine what that heart even wants. And there's layers on layers. I feel like we're our own halftime show for March. But on the 16th, as the moon continues its journey through Libra, it's really going to strive for balance and harmony in your connection. So just keeping your heart open is going to be important. On the 17th, emotions might be deep because, and I don't bring up a lot of these when the moon squares something because it moves so quickly and does it all the time. But the thing about this one is it's going to square Pluto, which is in Aquarius, really doing its first full tour. And so this is possibly where hidden truths might come to the surface. It could be really transformative in some way to release what's been holding you back. It just, if something comes up emotionally and you're like, oh, that was a little intense shadow work I wasn't expecting, it's okay because it might be the key to unlocking something that was deeper that's going to allow you that freedom. On the 18th, things are going to be moving quicker externally. Remember, we've got Mars moving forward. We're starting to get more and more of that Aries energy. It might take longer for your heart to catch up right now. So be mindful of those blurred boundaries or illusions and let this energy really inspire your imagination. On the 19th, the Sun and Neptune are going to come together for their once-a-year meetup. And for the last time, in the sign of Pisces for over 100 years. So this is a day to step back from the noise and take the time with your highest self. The thing about this, the sun amplifies who we are, right? It's our self-expression. It's our basic most self. And Neptune always asks us to look at the bigger, brighter, dreamier version of what it can be. So having these two together in Pisces for the last time in our lifetime, really take this as a moment to dream. That's been such a big theme for this whole episode, but this is an opportunity to lean into that. And the moon is going to shoot into Sagittarius. This is going to bring optimism and expansion. You'll likely feel a shift toward adventure, exploration, seeking higher truth. So if you spend that time in reflection, look at ways that it can kind of catapult you into what you're looking for. And then on the 20th, we usher in spring equinox and Aries. And one of the things I said to Andrew when we were getting ready to set the date to record is that I didn't want to leave people hanging in the middle of March because it's such a pivotal month. And we're literally right now like halfway between the two eclipses. So what we are going to do, and if you are good with just getting this information, then you can go ahead and stop. We'll have you back next month. If you are interested in how this is going to play out for the rest of the month, we kind of decided to give you a little bit of a preview. Andrea is going to pull another card. I'm going to talk a little bit about this massive eclipse that comes in and a lot of the symbology and things that we've uncovered about it. So I'm excited to see what you pulled because this is when things start to get spicy.
I have this was like I knew this kind of energy was going to come up because it's very much mirroring, but in an expansive way, what we've been seeing. So the card for the rest of March, which works out to be like the 21st to 31st, is the Page of Wands. So this page and knight energy, this movement, this whole month has like either the messengers, the pages that are bringing us something new, delivering something new to us, or the knights that are like really taking in, owning it, and action forward energy. And so we started with the Knight of Wands, which is that beat to your own drum, like really taking action on the things that inspire you. And then we had the Page of Swords, which was like information based, infuse some knowledge into what we're doing. And now when we get to this point, we just had the Page of Cups. So we go from this energy of like receiving all kinds of like, again, that dreamy energy you were just talking about, like really taking advantage of that time to dream and let things come to us, like inspirations, connection with spirit, connection with other people. And then at this point, with the Page of Wands, it's having like creative inspiration and that like creativity, that spark, like you're saying, like now we're fully in Aries energy with this. And it's like that spark that's going to drive you forward. So like what Emily said, like we have Mars moving forward now, we have Aries energy coming in, we have all of this opportunity to start going. So once you know what you've been dreaming, then that inspiration can come to you of how to use your energy creatively moving forward. Emily and I are both artists and we both work in intuitive spaces. We realize everyone listening isn't necessarily in these spaces, but it's just this idea that you can make changes in your life that are inspiring to you. You can use your energy in a new way. You can recognize the skills and the things that you have that are really beneficial. This might be a time when you start dreaming of doing something that maybe would start to infuse new energy. Maybe it's a new direction in your career. There's just something that is very creative and passionate about this energy where, again, with it being a page, 2 pages in a row, we got a 3 out of the 4 pages. Earth energy was very much the last while, but we got all of the other pages, which is like, this is not a time where we're going to count our pentacles. Right now, we're creating a new future. So we need our emotions. We need our inspiration and knowledge. We need all of this movement to inform us of where to go next. And this is the point where we're ready to go now. Whatever has been building, whatever ideas are coming together, you probably make connections throughout the month. And again, with this page energy, it is kind of like a messenger. So good news is usually like in the classic meanings, it's like, oh, you're going to have news delivered, or, you know, this is going to be something that maybe comes through another person. But this feels like a jumping off point into like, okay, I now dreamt the dream. I've had the manifestation. I've had the thing come up, and now I'm going to do it. I'm just going to trust that I'll be able to take action on this, and I'm going to really let myself dive deep into it and assume that there's a reason I'm feeling so passionate about it. And again, I feel like there's a reason we've been focusing in that earth energy that we had. It was preparing us to be in our bodies so that when all this inspiration and creativity and spiritual energy is around us, we know in our bodies that it's the right direction to go. And we don't need to have all of the ducks in a row. We don't need that Virgo energy. We don't need all of the plans to be in place before we jump. That's why I think the earth energy didn't show up at all in the cards, is because we're not trying to do things the way we used to do them. We're not going to follow a plan. We're just trying to get to the point where we're going somewhere exciting and we'll figure it out. That like say yes and figure it out later energy is exactly where we should be at this point because the whole world is changing. So why would we be trying to tag along with the old systems at this point? It doesn't make sense. It makes more sense to jump into the things that are driving you forward and inspiring you so that it's going to be sustainable. Because if you don't do things that light you up, that really like feel like you, then you're going to end up having to do this process all over again many, many times and end up at the same place.
Ugh, chef's kiss, because one of the things I wanted to talk about, and this is the perfect leeway, is how in 2025, all of the outer planets are moving into new signs and how this is really unprecedented. And if you take into account even some of the dwarf planets that are now beyond Pluto and some of those extras that we're now keeping track of, like it's kind of unprecedented in that it's possibly never all happened the way it's unfolding. So astrologically, when we look back at history, like you would in meteorology or anything else, to what was the last time this happened and what happened, we really don't have anything to compare it to. We have ideas. It's like a superstorm, right? And what's fascinating is that all of these outer planets are moving. And I'm talking, when I talk outer, I mean from Jupiter out. The inner planets are Mercury, Venus, and Mars, because those are really personal. They move quick. Those outer ones only change signs like once a year or even longer, sometimes even up to 30 years before they move. So we're going from entirely earth and water signs for all of these planets, where we have been slow, methodical, keeping traditions, we've been tied to how safe and secure we feel, all of these things. And we are busting into nothing but fire and air. And so I find it fascinating that all of the cards you pulled also line up with that, because things are going to be moving in such new ways that we aren't completely going to understand even yet how that's going to look or what it's going to feel like. And like we've been saying, we have to get clear on what we want, because things are just going to move, and they're going to move instead of, I always had this weird dream of elevators, that go up and down. They go vertically, da, 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 da. But all of a sudden, our elevator is going to go horizontal? Are they going to go diagonal? This is the type of energy, like you're going to get into an elevator and it's going to be like, wait a second, there's way more options here. Used to. That's the kind of energy that's coming in. And one of the things that I thought was so fascinating and I wanted to highlight about this end of March is that when we have this super Aries super moon solar eclipse, and it's a partial solar eclipse, it's not a total, but it's happening at exactly 9 degrees Aries. And every new moon from about August of 2024 has been happening in the 9-degree area. It's common for moons to be in similar degrees, but the fact that it's this 9-degree is significant, I think, because we're also in a 9-year. I think it's also significant because Mercury goes retrograde at 9 degrees, the beginning of March. Venus goes retrograde at 10 degrees. There's so much emphasis on this 9. And I want you to speak to this a little bit, Andrew, because you're way more versed in numerology than I am. But this idea of completion, of finishing something. And so I went to the Sabian symbols. And if you're not familiar, Sabian symbols have to do with, and forgive me for not having the exact person's name, but they were channeled. This woman, and this is hundreds of years ago, went through and channeled exactly what each degree means. And so they're very esoteric when you read them. They're usually just one word and a very ethereal kind of phrase. And so 9 degrees means the crystal gazer. And so I wanted to kind of give you an idea of what that essentially breaks down to mean. And it's the development of an inner realization or organic wholeness, right? The crystal sphere symbolizes wholeness. It's the whole picture. Within it, the whole image takes form, and it may reveal future events, but more significantly, you're able to see the situation as a whole. A clairvoyant is meant to interpret that situation as a whole, but when we speak it, right, we only have this ability to give you pieces. It's hard to put the entire picture into words. And what I think we're experiencing in this collective sort of cultural shift is the idea that we are seeing things now from this fuller, bigger picture, gaining that inner clarity and seeing a bigger version of what is actually possible, what is out there. And one of the things I was just going to look here at, I had, of course, Andrea, it's going to be gone again. I think chat hates me today. I really think it does. One of the pieces about that, this magic here is less about like fortune telling and it's more about clarity, like seeing how your emotions, right? We've had all this water energy, how your decisions, your external events, these grounded earth sign events all weave together to create the story that we now believe. And it's like realizing that your playlist, your mood, and your weather are all conspiring to make you feel something profound. And now you get to like change the stations. You get to go someplace else where the weather is different. You have some control over your mood. So this is really, I think, important for us as this eclipse happens. Like, what are we going to finally see? It's like we're all going to be looking collectively into a crystal ball and concentrating on what we're trying to bring into focus. And are we all going to see it at the same time?
That powerful with it being the 9 year, like Emily was saying. I think the piece that always sticks with me with the going from the 9 to the 1 is that in tarot and just the way I experience energy, there's that 0 that's in between. There's the point before, because 10, right? You go 9, 10. In my head, it's like you need that 0 before you get back to 1. And we don't get that in numerology. You go right from the 9 to the 1. And so there is that residual energy on either side of it. When you're in the 9 energy, you're seeing the new come in. And when you're in the 1, you're still kind of like still clearing out a few things from the 9. And so I think as much as like we're gradually building to this, it does feel more chaotic than you would think. It's not like it's a clean line, like, okay, this was the past, this is the future, here we go, jump on the timeline. It's that merging, it's that off ramp feeling that Emily was talking about. It's like you have to get there somehow. And there's going to be, some road bumps probably on the way. But I think because 9 is a completion card, the phrase live and learn comes up to me where it's like you've gone through a cycle. You learned a lot. You're bringing that with you. And the reason you're at a new stage is because you've completed it. What I was saying before, where like sometimes it's hard to let go because you feel like I'm really good at this. Why would I do something new? But it's like you've gotten everything you can out of it. So sometimes you may still try to go back for a little bit, but then you're like, this isn't going to work. It actually doesn't feel good anymore. I feel like I need more than this. And I think sometimes that can be a harsh reality, whether it's a relationship, a job, like outgrowing something can feel painful, but at the same time hopeful because then you're like, oh, now I get to do something new. And I think because 9 also has the energy of like Sagittarius, it has that energy of like spiritual knowledge and gathering wisdom and being a bit of a light and a teacher to others who are maybe just at the first stages of whatever you've just completed. I think that has a lot to do with the way we're experiencing the world right now. Like there's some people that have not looked at all at the patterns. They haven't looked at, what could be moving us forward. They've just been very blind, like blindly looking at it's like they've had blinders on to just what's directly in front of them. But like Emily said, that ability to zoom out and see how it fits into a bigger picture. Some people have more of that knowledge than others, and it's not a good or bad. It just means that people are exchanging information until we all kind of land in the middle where we're like, okay, at least we have somewhat of an understanding of like how we can move forward with this information. And the fact that the 9 also has the humanitarian energy, I think has a huge part into how we're going to experience that, where like the people that are leading us forward, we need the weight to be more on the people that are leading into that what's good for everyone, which is that I think also Aquarius ties into that a lot, like a lot of that energy we have going for us. So yes, there's a lot of fire, there's a lot of like action, there's a lot of like burn it all down. Yes, that's part of it, but it's because we have this vision of like what the new thing is going to be. Like the new cycle is going to be something that benefits everyone because we now have an understanding of what happens when we go a certain route. We know that it doesn't benefit most people. And so we have to flop that the other way, where it's like instead of a few people who somehow got the loopholes in the system and have gotten to the top, now we have to be like, actually, that's not working because like most of us will never experience that. So, like, how do we come together with the people who have the actual knowledge of how the system should work? And have that trickle down and have other people feel excited and hopeful so that they'll also take action forward. And I think the 9, as much as we can usually just say like, oh, just ending a cycle, starting something new, like wrap it up. Like, I think when it's on this big of a scale, like Emily said, like with all of the outer planets changing signs, things we'll never experience in our lifetime again, we have to understand that, like, if you do look and you have that teacher, that like higher perspective energy, if you look back at centuries and centuries before when these energies were playing out, there were revolutions, there were scientific advancements, there were really huge, huge shifts that happened that we just weren't alive for. We've read them like a storybook. I think that's the difference is like sometimes people read history as like, that's a nice story, but it's like, it actually has a reality to it. Like that I keep seeing that like 7 of Cups energy of like, yes, there's a difference between dreams and reality, but sometimes the discernment is realizing some of the things we thought were a story is actually very real right now. And some of the things we thought were real is actually an illusion. And that making choices piece of it, before you even get to the 9, some people are still making the choice of like, what do I believe is real? And that is why I think the 9 carries so much energy on either side because everyone's at a different stage. Some people are already in the new world, some people are already there and they're trying to drag us over the line. And some people are so far behind that they're still like, what is happening? I don't know if this is good or bad. Do I want to make a change? Am I going to stubbornly hold on to what I have now? Or am I going to trust that the people that are already there who are like, we're thriving over here are doing something right?
It's so fascinating, and I apologize to everyone, this is gonna be a long episode. But you were talking about the extremes between Pisces and Virgo and how really there's nothing else in the zodiac that has that, and here we are, right? The nodes have this emphasis, particularly during this window. And what came to mind was also how black and white we have become in politics, in our ideas, and our visions. And not to get too political, but I'm gonna go there, sorry. I think one of the things that has really come up for me in terms of the US election was that collective moment that so many of us felt when we woke up kind of in the middle of the night and read the results and were heartbroken, but we were also calm, right? There was this calm knowing of it's going to play out in the way it's supposed to. And I think watching from the inside so many things be dismantled is completely unnerving. Like, what are the ripple effects? We don't even know. That's all going to come into play. But also recognizing that this may be the easier way to create something new than it would have been to hold on to the old and have a literal revolution to overthrow it or change it in some way, because we're at that point, right? It's like a pimple that needs to be popped. Something's got to give. The energy is there. Even Earth is like, I'm ready to erupt. Something's got to give. And the piece that I keep holding on to in terms of that is how different the energy is now than it was in 2016, the first time Trump was elected. And then I started diving into his chart to see like, okay, well, what is going to come up for him in this March? And really, he's under a lot of pressure. And one of the things that I think is fascinating is towards the end of March, Neptune conjuncts his midheaven. And we're already starting to see some of this, like who's really in charge? Is he powerless? Is he disoriented? Is he going to get caught kind of in a compromising situation? There's some legal entanglement that comes into that. In the background, starting from January, the nodes are now straddling his sun and moon. So there's a lot of like health concerns and fated events and public struggles. There's just a lot of things that start to unfold for him in non-favorable ways. And not to say like getting rid of him is going to be the thing that catapults us forward. But it also represents some of that old system, right? We are clearly still in the gridlock of black and white. So what is it going to take for us to move back into that heart center, see the big picture as the 9, shed the skin like the snake, be soft and tender and a little nervous of what to do with our new skin, and step into something that's bigger and different?
Yeah, I think if we were to do things systematically to try and change it, it would take so much longer to pass like law by law by law by everything the long way. And I think by doing it this way, exposing everything at the extreme is a way for even the people who were thinking a certain direction was going to benefit them. And they're like, oh shit, this doesn't benefit me either. And I think the fact that that was the pinpoint moment where we realized this isn't a left and right, it's a top to bottom. It's a vertical issue. We're on the elevator, right? We were going escalator. We were going moving sidewalk, and it was leading us in a certain direction, where it's like now we're choosing the floor ourselves, right? Where I think that's the difference. Is like when you're only going left and right, there's not a lot of options. And also, when I was thinking about it, in that imagery, like if you're on an airport sidewalk, there's no like exits to get off. You just get all the way to the other end and you're there, versus an elevator where you're choosing the floor. And I think that's where we're trying to say is we're not saying everyone has to only do things a certain way. It's just that like if we're all at least going the same direction, we can kind of get off at different floors, and like be at a different point for some things. But the choices are the main thing. And I think that's what some people don't understand is it's not about everyone choosing the same exact reality for everyone, but it's like that we should all get to have more choice in where we end up and what we do and all of those things, like it's not about choosing for other people. And that's why like having like a faith office and having that even more amplified, we already knew that it was Christian ideology being, portrayed as law and as government. And that's the issue. But I think the fact that you're literally saying, oh, now we're going to have an office that is going to make sure that it's entrenched. I think that is, if it's not, the people that are not alarmed are the people that are aligned, right? And I think that's the thing is like, the more we could just play it off as like, oh, it's not that bad, but like they're literally doing it. Like Emily said, they're dismantling stuff. But on the flip side of that, in the less horrendous way, to be more hopeful, when I started seeing the conferences where Elon Musk is like the one talking and Trump is sitting like a small child at the desk, even though the child is interacting with him, it's like they're on the same level. Like the making fun and the name calling and whatever. It's like the kid's like, oh, he sees him as another small child. If someone is an authority figure, they're going to be too scared to do that. That was just one little nuance. But the other piece of it is if we are looking at it as like, oh my God, look how easily they're tearing down the system. That just shows us like, oh, it's also easy to tear it down and do something that benefits people. You're just showing that it was just a sham in the first place. All that showed us, as much as it is terrifying to see it happening so rapidly, at some point we can just make up new shit. So I think if anything, it does give me hope that there's a lot less red tape than we may have thought. It's like during COVID, whenever everyone used to have to go to the office every day, and then all of a sudden it's like you have to work at home. And then to try and convince you, like, actually, you have to be in the office. It's like, but I've been working at home this whole time. It's like they said, oh, it can't be done. We can't possibly have everyone at home and no one in the office. We physically have to be here. And all of a sudden, it's like, that was a lie. So it's the same thing with this. I think it's just exposing the fact that it's actually a lot easier than we thought. They just wanted to have the control and make us think that it had to be a certain way.
Oh, coot applause, finger snaps. I'm all about exactly what you're saying. I think one of the highlights that is like pinpointed for me in March is the March 21st. So this is literally the day after that 9-degree massive Aries eclipse, which also to note is wrapping up and tying up the last 18 months of the cycle between Aries and Libra, which is self versus relationships, all these things. So on the 21st, Trump gets his lunar return, which, okay, that happens every month. The moon comes back to where it was when you were born. But the trick about this one in particular is that Saturn is going to be positioned right on his midheaven, forming a square. So this is conflict to his natal sun. And this is a tough transit to go through. And usually it suggests career struggles, right? Public scrutiny, challenge on authority, there's going to be some tension that will directly affect his identity and leadership in some way. I did a little breakdown about this on Threads. If you want to find me over there, there's a whole little like 8 or 9 posts about it. But it's a moment of recognizing that we have to be clear in dreaming up the future that we want in order for it to manifest. And if we're all just doing the same motions, going through the same jobs with the same outcome day in and day out, not looking at our mindsets, not changing anything, it will recreate. We will run into the tree. So this is an opportunity for us to not focus on the tree and to look upward. I really feel like this is that moment of crystal ball gazing, exactly like the Sabian symbol says. How can you pull back and see the bigger picture? And the other thing to take note, when Mars stationed retrograde back in December, that was the exact day window where we had South Korea have a coup with their president. We had the vote of no confidence in France, and they dismantled their government. Then it turned around and happened in Canada. Like, we had a lot of geopolitical things come out of that, and I would not at all be surprised to see more of that start to come into play in March. We're so focused on what's happening in North America that I too need to pull back and look at the bigger picture and recognize that we are going to be moving through this window globally and a little less locally. Aquarius loves that part.
Like Emily said, like looking at the bigger picture, it's like also gathering more knowledge. It's realizing that there is a lot more going in the direction of hope if we really look at it. But the media is not showing how many simultaneous protests and walkouts and things are happening. All of the media companies, they all have someone they're answering to, but people, random citizens on TikTok and on other apps do not. That's why it's such a contentious thing, like where people are getting their news from actual people who are there, people from other countries that like we're being told a certain narrative. They're like, actually, it's not like that here at all. Like, that's actually not even close to the truth. What they're afraid of is the more knowledge we have, the more power we have. And I think that makes me hopeful, but I think we do have to be aware that like someone like Trump, if you do just look at his astrology, like Emily said, sometimes we do have these hints of like, okay, this could be a significant moment. So I'm going to prepare that there could be some big energies coming and, maybe bulk up the self-care that week, maybe be actually looking at other forms of media to make sure that you're getting the full picture. Again, the big picture, looking at multiple news sources and things if you are really heavily invested, not trusting just the news. Like every time I walk by and someone's just like watching the same news station, I'm like, you're not even close to getting all the information. But I think the more times we can come together, even just to build up our energy again.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for listening. We know this has been kind of a big episode, but we've got, like we were saying, major energy, March, April, May, June. So these few here might be a little bigger just because we want to make sure we're giving you more than enough information to manage this energy. But thank you all so much for listening. You know where to find us. Check us out on our websites, newsletters, all the places. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out via email. So thank you all for being here and have a wonderful Pisces season.
Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Spirit Crumbs. You can find me on Instagram for this podcast at Spirit Crumbs, or you can also find me at Concrete and Crystals for my own spiritual offerings and more tidbits about my own journey. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.